This is Ask an Expat with Marcus and Matt from an Expat's Russia, where we answer your questions about what it's like to live, work, and travel in Russia.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode. Today we're going to talk about what Russians think about Americans. I don't know about you, Marcus, but I had a number of kind of funny experiences over my time in Russia, answering strange and ridiculous questions from, what is Barack Obama doing? Being asked by a taxi driver, thinking that Barack Obama's best friend, I guess. I don't know. I remember that question quite vividly. I sat in the taxi, I had an accent. His first question in Russian was, what is Barack Obama doing? I just thought that was weird. But, my overarching thought is that most Russians have a very favorable opinion about America as a country and about Americans. Many obviously have a probably negative opinion about their American government, but I think what always struck me was how easy it was for Russians to separate the American government and American people. I think in the United States, if we're talking about Russians, I think a lot of Americans get very focused on, like Russia is bad, Russians are bad, and they can't really separate between, just average everyday people and the government, because to me they're two very, very different things. You can live in Russia, and whatever opinion you have of the government, it doesn't really matter. For me, it was Russian citizens who were almost always incredibly friendly and nice. So my overall thought, like I said, is that Russians, right or wrong, think that America is a great place. They like to always ask you, why would you come here? America's so great. You must have gotten certain, reactions like that.
Well, the funny thing is, if you spend time with Russians, you'll understand, over time, you'll understand that Russians are, critical of their own government, of how things are run, right?
Right.
So, which translates oftentimes into when you're talking to a Russian, and even if you're having like a heated argument, that he can still, invite you over for drinks or to the banya, or, and you can still be friends. So that's one really unique quality I think Russians have. And when they talk about America,
absolutely, yeah, I never thought about that.
When they talk about America, it's the same. From the same perspective, they see you as an American, but not necessarily you are a representative of the government. So, or whatever the government is doing. So, I do have a number of cases where Russians made funny comments about the president or some kind of policy, but then on the other hand, they would still express interest of actually moving to the US because they think it's better than Russia. Like,
right.
I would always hear, why are you in Russia when you could be in America, right? That's
right.
They were always surprised that I would choose to come to Russia versus, I guess, media probably plays the biggest role there.
Well, so you bring up media. I'm glad you did, because one of the things that's really frustrating to me is that there's this misconception in America that Russians love the government, that Russians, are completely brainwashed and have no idea what's going on. But actually, when I was in Russia, I always got the feeling that most Russians actually have more of an idea and are following many of the issues in much more detail than the average American.
Yeah.
And they were able to have intelligent discussions about, foreign relations and in international affairs, which, in the United States, if the word Russia just comes up, you've got this like crazy overload on any American, and, they can't even have a coherent conversation about Russia.
Well,
and what's funny is that the less they know about Russia, the more they're going to talk about Russia. Whereas in Russia, I found it was kind of the opposite. Like, most Russians were quite well versed on, what's going on in America, and had ideas, and they were not formed solely from, the first channel, the state media in Russia, is that, most people are watching YouTube and, watching Russians who are in America talking about what it's like, or on foreign websites, or on Russian media that's, maybe less biased than state media. But I don't know. I don't know how to put it into...
I think that, big influence on Russians is that, or, part of how they get information is, historically, Russians don't rely on their government for everything. So
Right.
they will watch.
Honestly, there's a lot of mistrust.
Yeah, they will watch the media with kind of the idea in the back of their mind, like how much is really true, you know? Whereas I think
Right.
so, and then they go into that with other things, right? They'll watch a segment in the media on the U.S. and then they'll look at other sources just because they've done it for a long time that way. Whereas maybe in the U.S. it's not like that, right? Because we've trusted.
No, I think in the U.S. we have overtrust of the media.
Yeah.
Where most Americans just believe what's ever on the media and they don't actually go and investigate. I mean, I've honestly never met an American who has never been to Russia who could speak about Russia at all. They've got very big ideas and ready to talk about it for hours, but they have no idea what they're talking about. Whereas I found Russians were a bit more, reserved when talking about, topics about politics and whatnot in general. They usually didn't open their mouth, or if they did, even if they didn't know much, you could at least tell that they were, talking about more than just what's spouted on state media.
Right.
I know I get fired up about this topic, but
I would say, I don't know if I should say to America's defense, but what I mean is, like, Russians, they have a lot of influences from American culture. Music, Hollywood, sure. Right? So by nature, they have more exposure on America. Whereas...
Wow, actually, real quick.
Yeah.
My wife's first observation when we came to the United States for the very first time was, there's nothing to see here. I've watched this in movies for 20 years. Like, it's New York, it's not even interesting.
That's a good point. And then
whereas Americans, you get to Russia and you're like, oh my gosh, Red Square,
new.
This is crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when I first went to Russia, I didn't know anything about Russia. So the average, what I'm basically saying is the average Russian knows much more about America, even if it's through movies or whatever, than the average American does about Russia. So, well, I think we said enough about that topic.
Right.
But I wanted to get more into, just real quick, why Russians feel that America is a better place to live if they've never been there, right? I've had many friends say, I would move to Russia, I would move to the US right now.
Right.
Have you?
It's honestly strange. Okay, so let's break this up into two different categories of people. First, you have the people who are relatively well off in Moscow and whatnot, and the people who have that idea strikes me as stranger, right? Because many of them live in much better conditions than they're going to live if they move to America. Because if you have, a good job in Moscow, you're really not making that much less money than you would in any other international city.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're going to trade a much higher cost of living for more or less the same salary, maybe a bit higher, right? But when you have, and then the other side of the spectrum is the people who have almost nothing in Russia, and they just think, I think much of their motivation is just like, well, I don't have a good life here. At the very least, I'm going to have clean streets and, order, and I'll have a job that pays, a livable wage.
And always pays
Whereas
on
I think
time.
Some of those assumptions...
The stability.
Right, always pays on time. But I think some of those expectations are misguided, right? Because, if you come to the US and you live in a big city, you're not going to have clean streets, especially if you don't have a good salary. You're going to be in a, not such a nice part of town. But you might have the stability.
Right.
There's definitely more stability to life in the US. But again, we mentioned in another video that a lot of Russians who come to the US end up returning to Russia simply because they don't like that stability.
Yeah,
it sort of kind of
they like the unpredictability.
Grinds on them.
Yeah, or it's boring.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I've had other Russians explain it to me as it's kind of like a lack of authenticity. So like, when things are going crazy, you have like this kind of authenticity to life. Had it explained to me that way once. But anyway, I think, in general, Americans, or rather Russians, have sometimes a biased view of what America is like and what Americans are like. And many times it's in our favor, for sure. I'm not going to, deny that. I think being an American in Russia, you get a lot of interest from average Russians, just interested in hearing your stories and what it's like, and there's genuine curiosity about America.
Right. Yeah, I would say, to conclude, in general, Russians know more about America than Americans do about Russia, and they have this, ability to kind of distinguish between, not distinguish, but separate,
Right.
the
government from average citizens.
Right. I don't even know, how to
Like the American people.
explain it. You just have to go to Russia and you'll understand where you're arguing with somebody and you can still, go have fun with them afterwards. Whereas in Russia, in other countries, I think that might be, I would never do something with that guy because I can't agree on that.
Oh, I mean, in the United States now, it's a big thing to be, like having opposite political views. It's difficult to sometimes have friendships. I'm not that kind of person, but I do know people who, if you disagree with them politically, then you're not a friend anymore. It's kind of crazy.
Right.
I mean, to a Russian, that's just like, why would you care what his political opinions are?
Right.
He's my friend. We just disagree on politics. But anyway, so we hope you enjoyed the video. If you like more videos like this, let us know in the comments. Tell us the questions that you have about Russia, and we'll give you sort of our opinions and answers. See you in another video.